In 2019, a new eye scanned the southern heavens. Deep in the Australian outback, the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder began mapping the sky to catalogue millions of distant galaxies. 36 identical parabolic dishes stood like silent sentinels in the dust, listening to the faint whispers of the early universe. The silence of the desert floor matched the vast, radio-silent history of the void above. Yet as the first images flickered onto computer screens, researchers encountered a structure that defied every known law of cosmic architecture. A ghostly, perfectly circular ring of radio light hung in the void, glowing with an eerie, edge-brightened intensity. No star occupied the center. No evidence of a supernova existed in the vicinity. Darkness alone reached our optical instruments. The ring was not a glitch or a trick of the lens. This discovery represented a giant that should not exist, a phantom ring stretching across the darkness of the high galactic latitudes. The discovery of these odd radio circles forced a radical shift in our perspective of the deep sky. These rings are not small, local anomalies. Redshift measurements reveal that these structures span 1 million light-years across, making each circle 10 times larger than the entire Milky Way galaxy. Redshift occurs as light stretches toward the red end of the spectrum while traveling through the expanding universe, allowing astronomers to calculate the distance to remote cosmic objects. These giants are so massive that light requires over 1 million years just to cross the diameter of one ring. Yet, despite this colossal scale, the most powerful optical telescopes on Earth see absolutely nothing in these regions of space. If humans could perceive radio frequencies, the night sky would not appear as a black canvas dotted with stars. Instead, the firmament would reveal a chaotic landscape of glowing clouds, magnetic filaments, and these terrifying, perfectly circular ghosts. We are blind to the vast majority of the reality that surrounds us, trapped in a narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, while giants drift through the dark. The mismatch between radio detection and optical silence presents a profound mystery. Prevailing narratives of the sky describe a universe filled with stars and gas. Yet these circles represent a massive energetic release that leaves no heat, no dust, and no visible trace. We are looking at the ghosts of cataclysmic events that occurred millions of years ago, fossilized remains of power that transcends human comprehension. This inquiry, led by astrophysicists such as Norris, indicates that the official story of how galaxies die and are reborn is incomplete. We will pull together threads from ancient galactic records and modern laboratories to reveal patterns that reshape our understanding of cosmic death. By tracing the invisible scars left by events so powerful they bent the fabric of space, we will uncover the connection between these radio circles and the most violent events in the known universe, bridging the gap between what we see and what truly exists. The journey ahead will descend through layers of data from the most advanced telescopes in the southern hemisphere. We will trace the discovery of the first 4 circles and examine the high-resolution images captured by the Meerkat Array in South Africa. We will begin with the raw data, the flickering pixels that first alerted researchers to a problem with our model of the sky. Then, we will decode the competing theories that attempt to explain these geometric masterpieces, from the relic lobes of giant radio galaxies, viewed end-on to the massive blast waves generated by the merger of supermassive black holes. Our investigation will examine the edge where certainty breaks, exploring how these rings might be fossils of a past so energetic that the shock waves still ripple through the intergalactic medium today. We will confront the possibility that the radio universe is far more crowded and far more ancient than anyone imagined, filled with the debris of galaxies that have long since vanished, from the optical sky. The discovery of odd radio circles proves that the cosmos still holds secrets capable of rewriting our entire understanding of the void. Odd radio circles represent a new class of extragalactic phenomena that challenge the very definition of a galaxy. These structures are not merely distant curiosities, but mirrors reflecting the violent history of the universe itself. The core question is not whether these circles are real, for the evidence is undeniable. The question is whether we possess the courage to transform our understanding of the universe before the vast, silent history of the cosmos transforms these ghosts into our own reflection. Now, before we unpack the evidence, I want you to know this investigation is stronger with your voice in it. Subscribe, engage in the comments with what you think, and help us build the most thoughtful community in science commentary. The silence of the Australian outback is not truly silent. Deep in the Murchison Radio Astronomy Observatory, the red dust hums with the invisible activity of the universe. In late 2019, 36 identical parabolic dishes pointed toward the southern sky. These machines belong to the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, or ASCAP. The telescope does not look at the universe with glass lenses. The facility listens to the radio whispers of the cosmos. For months, the team led by Ray Norris and Anna Kapinska had been scanning the heavens for the evolutionary map of the universe pilot survey. The goal was ambitious but standard. The team wanted to map millions of distant galaxies. The researchers expected to find the usual suspects. They expected spiral galaxies spinning in the dark and elliptical giants anchoring clusters. They even anticipated the chaotic debris of supernova remnants. But on a quiet afternoon in the data processing lab, the screen revealed a strange anomaly. The location of this discovery matters. The Murchison Shire is one of the quietest places on Earth for radio waves. Cell phone towers do not exist here. Radio stations do not operate in the region. Even the trucks driving in are modified to reduce electromagnetic interference. The site is a sanctuary of silence, designed to let the faintest signals from the edge of time reach the surface of the Earth without competition. In this remote sanctuary of silence, the ASCAP dishes act like a single, giant ear. The facility uses 36 dishes and a technology called phased array feeds, which allows the researchers to take panoramic pictures of the radio sky rather than just looking at pinpoints. The wide-angle view was the key. The perspective allowed the team to see large, faint structures that previous telescopes, with their narrow fields of view, had simply looked right through. Anna Kapinska was sifting through the wide-field raw data when a shape emerged from the digital noise. The object was not a spiral. The shape was not an undefined blob of gas. The anomaly was a perfect circle. A ghostly ring of radio emission hung in the void, edge-brightened and geometrically precise. In astronomy, geometric perfection is suspicious. Nature tends to be messy. Explosions are chaotic. Collisions are irregular. Gravity warps and distorts. But the ring looked artificial. The circle floated at high galactic latitude, far from the cluttered plane of the Milky Way. The structure possessed no central star. The ring had no optical counterpart. The most powerful optical telescopes on Earth looked at that exact spot and saw absolutely nothing, just the empty dark. Ray Norris looked at the image and assumed the obvious. The result must be a mistake. In radio astronomy, imaging artifacts are common. A bright source nearby can create reflections in the data. Poor calibration can create geometric ghosts. The team labeled the object with a mixture of confusion and skepticism. The researchers initially struggled to classify the anomaly. The temporary designation was a reaction to the absurd. The name was not a formal classification, but then the team found another one and another. Within weeks, the researchers had identified 4 of these distinct circular rings. The rings were not glitches, they were not software errors. The circles were real physical objects hanging in the intergalactic medium, and the objects were unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. The discovery sent a ripple of unease through the team. If the objects were real, the circles challenged the standard model of what exists in the radio sky. The circles were enormous. Based on redshift data, each ring spanned roughly 1 million light-years. To put the scale in perspective, the Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light-years across. 16 Milky Ways could fit side by side inside one of the circles. Light takes 1 million years to cross from one edge to the other. Yet, despite the colossal scale, the rings remain completely invisible to every other instrument humanity possesses. The objects emitted no X-rays, no infrared heat, and no visible light. The structures existed only in the radio spectrum. The circles were ghosts. The team officially named the anomalies odd radio circles, or ORCs. The name is almost comically understated. The label sounds like a minor curiosity, but the implications are terrifying. We assume we know the major players in the cosmic zoo. We know about stars, galaxies, black holes, and nebulae. But the discovery of the ORCs suggests that the universe is filled with massive, invisible structures that humanity has simply failed to notice. We have been staring at the sky for thousands of years, but humanity has been blind to the giants walking through the dark. The question has shifted beyond just identifying the objects. The investigation now asks how many other monsters are hiding in the data, waiting for us to learn how to listen. The investigation now arrives at the central paradox of the odd radio circles. The universe is a violent, chaotic place. When things explode, the events make a mess. When galaxies collide, the systems tear each other apart in messy tidal tales. When stars die, the objects eject material in ragged clouds. Symmetry takes energy. Symmetry takes order. To create a perfect circle, 1 million light-years across requires a mechanism of staggering precision, and yet the ORCs are defined by the geometry of the structures. The circles are not vague puffs of smoke. The anomalies are sharp, defined rings. The edges are brighter than the centers, indicating a shell-like structure. Consider the physics required to make a bubble of this size. If a person blows a bubble of gum, the surface tension holds the sphere in a shape. But in the vacuum of space, over distances of 1 million light-years, surface tension does not exist. Only gravity, gas pressure, and magnetic fields remain. To maintain a coherent circular shock wave over that distance, the expanding front must be moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light, and the wave must be expanding into a medium that is incredibly uniform. If the intergalactic medium were clumpy or dense, the ring would distort, the shape would break up. The bubble would look like a squashed egg, not a perfect ring. The circularity implies that these shock waves are traveling through a void so empty, so pristine, that nothing has disturbed the expansion of the waves for hundreds of millions of years. But nature abhors a vacuum, and nature abhors perfection even more. Let us look at the standard catalog of circular objects. Supernova remnants are the most common candidates. When a massive star dies, the core explodes, sending a shock wave into the interstellar medium. The violent release creates a bubble of hot gas and radio emission. From a distance, the objects can look circular, but supernova remnants are messy. The structures are filled with filaments and knots of gas. the shells into rounding dust clouds. And crucially, the remnants are small. A typical supernova remnant might be a few dozen light years across. The ORCs are tens of thousands of times larger. Comparing a supernova remnant to an odd radio circle is like comparing a single coin to the surface of the Earth. The scales do not match. Then consider planetary nebulae. The nebulae are the beautiful, glowing shells of gas ejected by dying sun like stars. The structures are often circular or spherical, but planetary nebulae are tiny. The shells are typically only a light year or two across, and the objects are bright. A person can see the nebulae with a backyard telescope. The ORCs are invisible to optical light. A planetary nebula would have a hot, dying white dwarf star in the center. The ORCs have nothing. The centers of these circles are dark. The team looked for infrared signatures using the WISE telescope data. The researchers looked for ultraviolet light using Galactic. The team found zero correlation. The mechanism that created the ORCs left no thermal footprint. The lack of thermal emission is bizarre. Energy usually creates heat. A blast wave powerful enough to excavate a hole in the universe, 1 million light-years wide, should leave a thermal scar. But the ORCs are cold. The circles are radio ghosts, whispering in the dark without a body. The mystery deepens when the team looks at the location of these objects. In astronomy, location is evidence. The Milky Way is a flat disk. Most of the gas, dust, and stars reside in the galactic plane. If a person looks toward the center of the galaxy, the sky is crowded. If the ORCs were local objects, such as weird supernova remnants or strange planetary nebulae, the circles should cluster near the galactic plane. That is where the stars are. That is where the explosions happen. But Norris and the team found the ORCs at high galactic latitudes. The circles were floating way out in the empty space, above and below the galactic disk. The distribution is a smoking gun. The location tells the team that the ORCs are not local. The circles are not part of the internal churn of the galaxy. The objects are extragalactic. The rings belong to the deep universe. The high latitude rules out almost every local explanation. The anomalies cannot be weird stars or local dust clouds, nor can the rings be artifacts of our own solar system. The objects are monsters roaming the deep void between the galaxies, but the extragalactic distance creates a new problem. If the rings are extragalactic, then the angular size of the structures on the sky implies a truly monstrous physical size. An object that looks 1 arcminute wide on the sky, but sits at a redshift of 0.5, must be enormous. So the circles are real, and the circles are distant. But distance alone does not explain the impossible precision of the shapes. If the rings sit at cosmological distances, then the angular size of the structures on the sky implies a truly monstrous physical scale. An object that looks 1 arcminute wide on the sky, but sits at a redshift of 0.5, must be enormous. The implications demand a rigorous rejection process. Let us dig into the rejection process. Science is not about proving what something is. Science is about proving what something is not. Norris spent months trying to kill the discovery. The first suspect was the telescope. ASCAP is a complex machine. The facility uses 36 dishes working in unison. The data from these dishes travels through miles of fiber optic cable. A supercomputer combines the signals to create an image. Somewhere in that pipeline, a glitch could occur. Perhaps a bright source of radio waves, like a GPS, satellite, or a distant quasar, bounced a signal off the metal support struts of a dish. The reflection creates what astronomers call a side lobe response. The error can look like a ring. The team checked the data. The rings did not move. Satellites move. The rings stayed fixed in the sky. The team checked the time. The observations happened on different days, with the telescope pointing in different directions. A side lobe artifact usually appears in a specific pattern relative to the focus of the telescope. The ORCs appeared in random locations. But the final nail in the coffin of the artifact theory came from other telescopes. The team turned the giant meter-wave radio telescope in India toward the coordinates. The researchers pointed the Meerkat array in South Africa at the same spot. The team even checked the archives of the Murchison Wide Field Array. The Murchison Array is a low-frequency telescope that sits in the same desert as ASCAP. The Murchison Wide Field Array looks at the sky in very long wavelengths, much longer than ASCAP. If the ORCs were just a digital glitch in the high-frequency data, the Murchison Wide Field Array should see nothing. But when the team stacked the data, piling image upon image to reduce the noise, the ghosts appeared in the archive. The objects were fainter and blurrier, but the circles were undeniably real. The cross-confirmation from multiple instruments operating at different frequencies killed the glitch theory. If the rings were a glitch in the Australian computers, the other telescopes would see blank space. But the other instruments did not. The rings were there. Meerkat saw the circles with even higher resolution. The rings resolved into thin, delicate shells. The images showed internal structure. The data showed subtle variations in brightness. A digital glitch does not have internal structure. A reflection does not have fine filamentary details. The anomalies were physical objects made of plasma and magnetic fields. The circles were real, and because the objects were real, the team had to face the uncomfortable reality that our map of the universe contained a massive hole. The statistical improbability of these objects cannot be overstated. The evolutionary map of the Universe Pilot Survey covered only a small patch of the sky. Finding 4 distinct ORCs in that small sample suggests that thousands could exist across the entire sky. We are not looking at a freak event. We are looking at a common population of objects that humanity simply never had the eyes to see before. The ubiquity changes the game. The data means that energetic circles are a fundamental part of the life cycle of the universe. Whatever makes the rings happens frequently. But what makes the circles? The standard catalog fails at the junction of scale and mechanism. Let us look at the spectral index. Radio astronomers measure how the brightness of an object changes at different frequencies. Astronomers call this measurement the spectral index. The value tells the researchers about the age of the electrons producing the light. To understand the physics, we have to look at how radio emission works in these objects. The process is called synchrotron radiation. When an electron spirals around a magnetic field line, the particle screams. The electron emits a photon of radio light. The speed of the electron determines the frequency of the scream. Fast, high-energy electrons scream in high frequencies. Slow, tired electrons whisper in low frequencies. Fresh, high-energy explosions typically have a flat spectral index. The electrons are energetic and buzzing across the whole spectrum. But electrons lose energy over time. The high-energy electrons burn out first. The particles radiate away energy and slow down. As a population of electrons ages, the high-frequency screams fade away, leaving only the low-frequency whispers. The cooling of the electrons creates a steep spectral index. The ORCs have a spectral index of -1.17. In plain English, the value means the electrons are old. The particles are ancient. The electrons have been spiraling in those magnetic fields for a very long time, bleeding away energy until only the deep radio bass notes remain. The spectral index tells a story. The value tells the team that whatever created the ORCs see did not happen yesterday. The shell is not a fresh explosion. The object is a fossil. We are looking at the aftermath of an event that occurred millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of years ago. The shock wave has been traveling for eons. The electrons have been cooling down, losing energy to the void. The ghost is large, and the ghost is old. The age of the electrons adds a dimension of time to the mystery. We are doing archaeology on a galactic scale. We are digging up the bones of a dead event. But even fossils usually leave a skeleton. If a massive galaxy exploded, where is the galaxy? In the center of ORC 1, nothing but a faint, unassuming elliptical galaxy remains. The galaxy looks normal. The object is quiet. The host is not an active quasar spewing jets of fire. The center is a dead red galaxy sitting quietly in the dark. How could such a boring, quiet object produce a shock wave 1 million light years across? The scene is like finding a crater the size of a city, and in the center, a single, unexploded firecracker sits. The cause does not seem to match the effect. The mismatch forces the team to reconsider the history of that quiet galaxy. Perhaps the host was not always quiet. Perhaps deep in the past of the galaxy, the center was a monster. The orc is the evidence of a violent youth. The ring is the echo of a scream that happened eons ago. But this explanation has holes. Why is the ring so perfect? Why is the circle so empty? If the cause was an explosion, where is the debris? Usually, explosions eject matter. The events throw out gas, dust, and heavy metals. The orc seems to be made of pure shock. The structure is a ripple in the magnetic field, illuminating a tenuous plasma, but carrying very little mass. The ghost is a geometric abstraction stamped onto the sky. The evidence leads us to the edge of our knowledge. We have found the circles. We have measured the size of the structures. We have determined the age of the electrons, but we still do not know what birthed the rings. The rejection of the standard models leaves the team with a blank canvas. Supernova remnants do not fit. Planetary nebulae are too small. Imaging artifacts are ruled out. We are left with the impossible. A million light-year bubble of magnetism, invisible to the eye, old as the hills, and centering on a galaxy that looks like the host has been asleep for billions of years. The pieces do not fit, and when the pieces do not fit, the real investigation begins at the point of anomaly. We have to look closer at the evidence. We have to look at the faint red galaxies sitting in the crosshairs. We have to ask what the galaxies are hiding, because in the silence of the radio sky, a violent event occurred, and the smoke ring is still expanding. That expansion creates a problem that simple physics cannot solve. To understand why the expansion is a problem, we have to look at the geometry. In nature, circles are suspicious. True, perfect circles are rare. A person might see a bubble of gas in a liquid. A person might see a crater on a moon. But in the chaotic, violent environment of the intergalactic medium, geometric perfection usually means one of two possibilities. Geometric perfection means the object is artificial, or the symmetry means we are looking at a force of physics acting in a way humanity has never seen before. The images from the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder do not show vague blobs. The data show rings, and crucially, the images show a specific kind of ring. Astronomers call this morphology edge brightened. Imagine looking at a soap bubble floating in the air. The center of the bubble is transparent. A person can look right through the film, but the edges of the bubble look thicker. The edges look brighter. The effect is not because the soap is thicker at the edge. The film is the same thickness everywhere. The edge looks brighter because of the line of sight of the observer. When a person looks at the center, the observer is looking through a thin layer of soap. When a person looks at the edge, the observer is looking tangentially through the curve of the film. The line of sight passes through more material. Astronomers call this optical illusion limb brightening. Observing limb brightening in deep space reveals a profound truth about the three-dimensional geometry of the objects. The brightening proves the team is not looking at a flat disk, like a dinner plate facing the Earth. The effect also proves the team is not looking at a solid sphere, like a planet or a star, which would be brightest in the center where the material is thickest. The limb brightening means the team is looking at a hollow shell. We are seeing a bubble. The geometry dictates that the path of sight through the edge is significantly longer than the path through the center. The odd radio circles are spherical shells of tenuous plasma expanding into the void, with all the emitting material concentrated in a thin, fragile skin. But a soap bubble is held together by surface tension in the vacuum of space over distances of 1,000,000 light years. Surface tension does not exist. Only the violence of the expansion and the resistance of the medium remain. To maintain a perfect spherical shape over the scale requires a shock wave of unimaginable consistency. If the shock wave hit a cloud of dense gas on one side, the bubble would dent. If the explosion that created the bubble was lopsided, the sphere would be an oval. The circularity implies that the waves are expanding into a vacuum so perfect and so empty that nothing has disturbed the journey of the shock for hundreds of millions of years. Now we examine the light. We are seeing synchrotron radiation. Recall that the radio light is the result of the screams of electrons spiraling around magnetic field lines. But the structure of the signal reveals specific details about the environment. The fact the team sees the objects as rings tells the researchers that the magnetic field is compressed at the shock front. The expanding wave is sweeping up the loose magnetic fields of the intergalactic medium, tangling the fields, compressing the lines, and lighting the region up. We are seeing a magnetic wall moving through the dark. The geometry brings us to the first piece of hard evidence that makes the pieces of the puzzle clash: the thickness of the ring. In ORC-1, the ring is not a hairline fracture. The structure is a thick band. The data from Norris and the team show that the ring has internal structure. The ring has knots. The band has filaments. The shape looks less like a soap bubble and more like a smoke ring blown by a giant. Inside the ring, the emission drops, but the signal does not go to zero. Faint emission persists in the center. The faint glow suggests the shell is not empty. The hollow space is filled with a tenuous, magnetized plasma that is still glowing, just much more faintly than the edge. Now, look at the host galaxies. Here, the detective story shifts from the crime scene to the suspect. In the center of ORC-1, ORC-4, and ORC-5, the researchers find a galaxy. But the team does not find a standard galaxy. The researchers find a specific type of galaxy that makes the mystery harder to solve. The team finds elliptical galaxies. To understand why the host is a problem, we have to look at how galaxies exist and perish. Spiral galaxies, like our own Milky Way, are factories filled with cold gas and dust. The engines are constantly birthing new stars, creating a messy, active, and blue environment. Elliptical galaxies are different. The hosts are the retirement homes of the cosmos. The objects are usually the result of massive collisions that stripped away the gas and dust. The galaxies are balls of old red stars buzzing around a central core like bees around a hive. The systems are not making new stars. The galaxies are dead. Consider the life cycle of a galaxy. When the universe was young, most galaxies were spirals, churning out stars at a furious rate. But gravity is patient. Eventually, galaxies fall together. When two spirals collide, the delicate arms are shredded. The gas clouds smash into each other, triggering a massive, chaotic burst of star formation. The event is the starburst phase. The galaxy burns through the fuel supply in a cosmic flash, like a party that goes too hard and runs out of drinks before midnight. Once the gas is gone, the party is over. The new, merged galaxy settles down into a featureless, spherical blob. The hot, blue stars die out first, exploding as supernovae. The only stars left are the cool, red dwarfs that burn for trillions of years. The galaxy turns red and the system turns quiet. Astronomers call the process quenching. The galaxy has been quenched, but the mechanism of the death is crucial to the investigation. Quenching involves more than running out of fuel. The process is often an act of murder. The leading suspect in the cosmic homicide is the supermassive black hole at the center. During the merger, as gas funnels into the core, the black hole wakes up. The beast begins to feed. As the monster feeds, the core spews out jets of energy and radiation. Astronomers call the phenomenon active galactic nuclei feedback. The energy from the black hole heats up the remaining gas in the galaxy. Hot gas cannot collapse to form stars. The plasma is too energetic. The process resembles trying to build a snowman out of steam. The black hole literally cooks the galaxy from the inside out, sterilizing the host. The radiation pushes the cold, star-forming gas out into the halo, leaving the galaxy barren. The link connects the suspect directly to the crime scene. If the central black hole was powerful enough to kill the galaxy, perhaps the engine was also powerful enough to launch the shockwave that created the odd radio circle. The silence of the galaxy is not a sign of innocence. The quiet is the footprint of a violent past. The object is a fossil of the former galaxy, floating in the dark, waiting for the end of time. Finding an explosion around one of the passive giants is like walking through a quiet cemetery and finding a smoking crater next to a tombstone. The violence does not belong in the quiet sanctuary. The galaxy in the center of ORC 1 is a reddish elliptical. The galaxy in the center of ORC 5 is the same. The objects are geologically quiet places. The hosts do not look like the kind of violent, active monsters that could blow a million-light-year hole in the universe. If the researchers found a massive quasar in the center, a supermassive black hole actively eating matter and spitting out jets of fire, the ring would make sense. We would say the monster released a burst of energy, but we do not see a monster. We see a sleeping giant. The mismatch represents the core anomaly. The scene is like walking into a quiet suburban library and finding a crater the size of a nuclear test site in the reading room. The evidence of the explosion is massive. The suspect looks as though the entity has been asleep for 1 billion years. Consider the data from ORC 4. ORC 4 is the circle discovered by Huib Intima using the giant meterwave radio telescope in India. ORC 4 is special. In the other circles, the central galaxy is radio quiet. But in ORC 4, a faint radio source sits in the center, a weak heartbeat. The signal tells the researchers that the supermassive black hole in the center is active, but only barely. The source is not a roaring jet. The signal is a whisper. Is the whisper the smoking gun? Is the signal the remnant of the engine that created the ring? Or is the heartbeat a coincidence? The team used the Wide-Field Infrared Survey Explorer to check the colors of the galaxies. In astronomy, color is a thermometer. Blue means hot, young, massive stars. Red means cool, old, low-mass stars. The infrared data confirms that the hosts of the odd radio circles are red. The galaxies are dominated by old stars. The data matches the spectral index of the rings. Remember, the radio waves from the rings are steep, meaning the electrons are old. The galaxies are old. The rings are old. We are looking at a fossil system. But how does humanity know the true scale of the objects? Researchers keep throwing around numbers like 1 million light-years or 500 kiloparsecs. How does the team know the ring is not just a tiny planetary nebula sitting right in front of the observer? The investigation now arrives at the moment. We must verify the distance. We measure the distance using redshift. As the universe expands, light traveling through space gets stretched. A wave of blue light, if the wave travels far enough, will stretch out until the light becomes red. If the light travels even farther, the wave stretches into infrared, then into radio. By measuring how much the light has shifted, we can calculate exactly how far away the object is. For the central galaxies of the odd radio circles, the team uses a technique called photometric redshift, usually to get a perfect distance. A researcher wants a spectrum, a rainbow of light broken down into lines. But the galaxies are faint, so instead, astronomers look at how bright the galaxy is in different color filters. The researchers measure the brightness in blue, green, red, and infrared. The team fits a curve to the data points. The shape of the curve reveals the redshift. Think of the method like identifying a car by sound as the car drives away. As the car speeds away, the pitch of the engine drops. The shift is the Doppler effect. In light, as a galaxy moves away from the observer with the expansion of the universe, the entire light spectrum shifts toward the red. A specific feature exists in the spectrum of galaxies called the 4,000 angstrom break. The break is a sudden drop in brightness caused by the absorption of light by metals in the stars. In a nearby galaxy, the drop happens in the blue part of the spectrum. But if the galaxy is far away, the redshift pushes the drop into the green, or the red, or the infrared. By looking at which filter the galaxy disappears in, astronomers can estimate how much the light has shifted. If the galaxy is bright in the red filter, but invisible in the blue filter, researchers know the break has shifted past blue. The dropout technique allows the team to estimate the distance without needing a high-resolution spectrum. Method is a coarse ruler, but the technique proves effective. For ORC-1, the photometric redshift is roughly 0.55. In the language of cosmology, the value places the object about 5.5 billion light-years away. The number is staggering. 5 billion years ago, the Earth did not exist. The sun was just a cloud of cold molecular dust floating in a spiral arm. When the light we are seeing now left the galaxy, our solar system was just a theoretical possibility waiting for a trigger to collapse. The light traveled through the void while the Earth formed, while life emerged, while the dinosaurs rose and fell, and while humanity built telescopes. We are receiving a postcard from an era before our own origin. Once a researcher knows the distance, the observer can calculate the size. The calculation uses simple trigonometry. We know the angle the ring takes up on the sky. For ORC-1, the ring is about 80 arcseconds across. An arcsecond is a tiny slice of the sky. The full moon is 1,800 arcseconds wide, so the ring appears small to the eye. But at a distance of 5 billion light-years, 80 arcseconds translates to a physical diameter of roughly 500 kiloparsecs. 500 kiloparsecs. Try to visualize the scale. A parsec is about 3.26 light years. So 500 kiloparsecs is roughly 1.6 million light years. The Milky Way galaxy is about 100,000 light years wide. The measurement means a person could take 16 Milky Way galaxies and line the systems up, edge to edge, inside the diameter of ORC-1. But 16 Milky Ways is just a number. Place the structure in our local neighborhood to understand the scale. If a researcher anchored the center of ORC-1 to the location of the Sun, the edge of the ring would engulf the Earth. The boundary would swallow the nearest stars, passing Alpha Centauri and Sirius without pausing. The shock front would expand past the Orion Nebula and the center of the Milky Way. The edge would reach almost all the way to the Andromeda Galaxy. We are talking about a single structure that spans the entire distance between the two largest galaxies in our local group. The void between the Milky Way and Andromeda is 2.5 million light years of absolute emptiness. To fill the void with a single coherent object requires an energy release that defies standard models. The structure is not galactic. The object is intergalactic. A structure of this size dominates the volume of space occupied. If an observer were floating inside the ring, the person would not see a wall. The gas is too diffuse. But if the person possessed radio eyes, the wall would cover half the sky. A glowing magnetic curtain would stretch from horizon to horizon, marking the boundary of a blast zone that dwarfs anything in human experience. The curtain would look like a static storm frozen in time, a monument to a violence that occurred before the dinosaurs evolved. And yet, the object is invisible. The mismatch represents the paradox that keeps astronomers awake at night. How can an observer have an explosion that creates a structure larger than a galaxy cluster, but leaves no trace in visible light? If a star explodes, we see the flash. If a black hole eats a star, we see the X-rays. But whatever created the odd radio circles was a ghost. The event moved a mountain of energy, but the expansion happened without lighting a fire. The distance measurements for the other circles confirm the scale. ORC-5, the one discovered by Koribalski, has a redshift of 0.127. The object is closer, about 3 billion light years away. The ring is about 70 arcseconds wide. When a researcher runs the math, the diameter comes out to about 300 kiloparsecs, smaller than ORC-1, but still an absolute monster. 300 kiloparsecs is 1 million light years. The consistency suggests that ORCs are a standard class of object. We are not looking at random debris. We are looking at a specific mechanism that produces rings of a specific size. The universe has a cookie cutter, and the shape of the cookie cutter is a circle 1 million light years wide. But here, the story gets messy. Not all the circles are the same. ORC-1 is a beautiful, complete ring. But look at ORC-5. The eastern edge is bright. The western edge is faint. The shape looks like a letter C. Why the asymmetry? If the explosion was spherical, why is one side brighter? Two possibilities exist. Possibility 1, the medium is not empty. Perhaps the eastern side of the shock wave hit a wall of gas. When a shock wave hits a wall, the wave slows down. The gas compresses, the magnetic fields pile up, the emission gets brighter. So maybe the team is seeing the invisible terrain of the intergalactic medium. mapped out by the collision of the shock wave. Possibility 2. The host galaxy is moving. If the galaxy was moving through space when the event happened, the bubble would be dragged along with the galaxy. Or perhaps the galaxy is moving now, leaving the bubble behind. But the galaxy is sitting perfectly in the center. The centering is suspicious. If the bubble is old, hundreds of millions of years old, and the galaxy is moving, the galaxy should have drifted off center by now. Galaxies move at hundreds of kilometers per second. Over 100 million years, a galaxy can travel quite a distance. The fact that the galaxies are still centered in the rings reveals a crucial fact about the timing. Either the galaxies are stationary relative to the ring, or the event happened recently enough that the hosts have not had time to drift. But we know the electrons are old. We know the ring is huge, so the recent event theory does not fit. The alignment implies that the ring and the galaxy are gravitationally locked, or that the entire system is floating in a remarkably stagnant part of the universe. We are left with a set of facts that refuse to cooperate. We have rings the size of galaxy clusters. We have host galaxies that look as if the systems have been dead for eons. We have radiation that speaks of ancient, tired electrons. And we have a shape, that perfect haunting circle, that implies a unified, coherent event of unimaginable power. The universe is telling humanity that we are missing a page in the textbook. We know how stars die. We understand how black holes eat. But humanity does not know what creates a million light-year smoke ring. To find the answer, we have to stop looking at what is there and start asking what is missing. We have to look at the ghosts. We have measured the body. We have identified the scene. Now, we have profiled the suspect, but the strangest evidence is yet to come. The investigation now forces us to examine the fingerprints. We have to look deeper at the spectral index, the polarization, and the strange pairing of ORC 2 and 3, because the deeper humanity digs, the stranger the evidence becomes. The mystery concerns what the evidence tells us about the empty space we inhabit. The void is not empty. The volume is full of ghosts, and the team has just found the first one. But the investigation does not end with the size. If a person wants to solve a crime, the observer does not just measure the body. The researcher checks the temperature. The investigator finds out how long the victim has been cold. And the investigation now arrives at the point where simple geometry shifts into impossible physics. We have established that the odd radio circles are massive. We have established that the host galaxies are quiet. And we have established that the electrons are old, screaming the final, low-frequency whispers of the particles into the dark. But the establishment of those facts creates a problem that most people miss. Think about a campfire. When the wood burns down to coals, the heat fades, the light dims. Eventually, the embers go black in the vacuum of space. Relativistic electrons behave the same way. The particles lose energy over time. The charges radiate away the momentum of the particles. Based on the spectral index of -1.17, we know these electrons have been cooling for tens of millions of years. The fire went out a long time ago. So why can humanity still see the circles? The scenario represents the re-acceleration paradox. Old electrons should be invisible. The fact that the ring is glowing, even faintly, implies that an unknown force is keeping the embers alive. The shock wave is kicking the particles, adding just enough energy to keep the electrons screaming in the radio spectrum. The requirement tells humanity that the shock wave is not just a passive ripple. The wave is an active engine. The structure is acting like a snowplow, scooping up the tired, ancient electrons floating in the intergalactic medium. and giving the particles a second life. The mechanism is called Fermi acceleration. To understand the physics, imagine a tennis ball bouncing between two moving trucks that are driving toward each other. Every time the ball hits a bumper, the ball picks up the speed of the truck. In the vacuum of space, the shock wave acts like the first truck, and the turbulence of the magnetic field acts like the second. The electrons are trapped in the magnetic cage. The particles bounce back and forth across the shock front, gaining a tiny fraction of energy with every deflection. The acceleration is not a sudden kick. The mechanism is a diffusive process, a gradual, relentless climbing of the energy ladder. The particle crosses the shock, gains speed, gets tangled in the magnetic field upstream, and is thrown back into the shock. The cycle repeats thousands of times per second. With every crossing, the electron steals momentum from the shock wave. The particle surfs the magnetic turbulence until the electron reaches relativistic speeds, screaming out energy as synchrotron radiation. The shock wave is not just pushing the gas, the wave is organizing the chaos into a coherent beam of high-energy particles. The discovery changes the profile of the suspect. We are not just looking for an explosion. The investigation is hunting for an event powerful enough to create a self-sustaining particle accelerator 1 million light-years wide. The team is searching for a machine that can resurrect dead plasma. But if ORC-1 was a solitary monster, humanity might be able to write the ring off as a freak of nature, a single galaxy that had a particularly violent bad day. But the universe threw a wrench in the theory with the discovery of Odd Radio Circle 2, because right next to ORC-2, sitting in the darkness just 2 arc-minutes away, is Odd Radio Circle 3. The proximity represents the pairing anomaly, and the investigation now hits the point where the rare explosion theory starts to crumble. Let us look at the statistics. Researchers have found only a handful of these objects in the entire sky. The rings are rare. The probability of finding one is low. The probability of finding 2 of the objects right next to each other by pure chance is vanishingly small. Norris calculated the odds. The chance of a random alignment of 2 independent objects just happening to lie on the same line of sight is less than 1 in 10,000. In science, when a person sees 2 rare phenomena standing next to each other, the researcher does not assume coincidence. The team assumes a connection. The researchers assume the objects are related. Imagine a person walking through a vast, empty desert. The traveler walks for days and sees nothing but sand. Then, suddenly, the person finds a crater, and 50 feet away, the traveler finds another crater. Does the person assume 2 separate meteors happened to hit the same square mile of desert a million years apart? No, the person assumes the meteors fell together, or the traveler assumes one event created both. But ORC-2 and ORC-3 are different. ORC-2 is a big, edge-brightened ring with a galaxy in the center. The object looks like the classic ORC, but ORC-3 is different. The shape is a faint, fuzzy blob. The structure has no obvious central galaxy. The object looks like the ghost of a ghost. Why are the rings together, and why are the shapes different? One possibility is that the rings are a binary system. Maybe the 2 galaxies were interacting. Maybe the hosts fell into each other, and the gravitational interaction triggered explosions in both. But the team does not see a second galaxy in ORC-3. The researchers see empty space. The finding leads to the cluster hypothesis. Maybe ORCs are not isolated events. Maybe the rings only happen in specific crowded environments. We know that galaxies are social creatures. The systems exist in groups, falling together under the influence of gravity to form massive clusters. In these regions, the space between the galaxies is not empty. The intra-cluster medium is filled with a soup of hot gas and tangled magnetic fields. The density here is higher than in the voids. If an explosion happens in the thick atmosphere, the shock wave lights up. Think of a thunderclap. In the thick air of the lower atmosphere, the sound is loud. In the thin air of the stratosphere, the sound is faint. Maybe ORCs are simply standard explosions that are happening in a loud environment. The galaxies in ORC 2 and 3 might be falling into a common gravity, stirring up the medium, creating a dense, turbulent fog that makes the shock waves visible. If a group of galaxies falls into a cluster, the motion might trigger multiple shock waves. The events might light up multiple patches of the intergalactic medium, creating a complex weather system of radio emission that spans millions of light years. If the hypothesis is true, ORT 2 and 3 are not siblings. The rings are neighbors. The objects are parts of a much larger structure that humanity cannot quite see yet. We might be looking at the peaks of a massive mountain range of radio emission that is mostly below the detection threshold. The pairing might just be the two brightest spots in a massive, invisible web. The pairing challenges the single event theory. If a supermassive black hole merger creates a shock wave, the mechanism is a one-time event. Black holes merge, the monsters release energy, and the system settles down. A person does not get a second burst unless the system was a triple black hole system, or unless the shock wave from one galaxy hit the neighbor and triggered a secondary explosion. The mechanics of the interaction are mind-bending. Imagine a shock wave crossing the void, hitting a galaxy a million light years away and waking the galaxy up. The process is action at a distance, on a scale humanity struggles to model. The connection implies a connectivity in the universe that we usually ignore. The link implies that galaxies are not islands. The hosts are nodes in a network, and when one node screams, the others echo. Now we have to talk about the silence, the deafening absolute silence of the rest of the spectrum. In astronomy, researchers rely on multi-wavelength data. The practice is the standard operating procedure. Astronomers point the Hubble Space Telescope to look for stars. Teams direct the Chandra X-ray Observatory to look for hot gas. Researchers use the Wide-Field Infrared Survey Explorer to look for dust. We stack the evidence. The team builds a composite image. Usually the method works. If the researchers see a supernova remnant in radio, the team sees the glowing gas in optical. If the researchers see a black hole jet in radio, the team sees the hot accretion disk in X-ray. The universe is usually noisy across the board. High-energy events usually leave footprints in every part of the spectrum. But with odd radio circles, the other telescopes see nothing. The lack of heat explains why the multi-wavelength void exists, and the void is the most frustrating and most fascinating part of the investigation. The team looked at the Dark Energy Survey optical data. The researchers looked deep. The scientists looked for a ring of stars. Maybe the explosion triggered a wave of star formation. Maybe the shock wave compressed the gas and birthed millions of new suns. If the genesis happened, we should see a blue ring in the optical images. We see nothing. The space where the ring sits is dark. The darkness tells the team the shock wave did not trigger star formation. The wave passed through the gas without lighting the stellar fuse. The group looked at the X-ray data. The data point is where the mystery deepens. The Chandra X-ray Observatory is designed to hunt for the hottest things in the universe. The observatory looks for gas heated to millions of degrees. If the structure is a massive shock wave traveling at thousands of kilometers per second, the wave should be heating the gas. Shock waves create friction. Friction creates heat. Heat creates X-rays. Humanity should see a ring of hot, glowing plasma. The detectors on Chandra opened their eyes. The sensors stared at the void for hours, and the instruments recorded background noise, 0-point photons. The silence is bizarre. In almost every other case of a massive cosmic shock, like the Bullet Cluster or the Perseus Cluster, the X-ray image is blindingly bright. When gravity smashes gas clouds together, the friction usually heats the material to 10 million degrees. The gas glows in X-rays like a neon sign, but here the sign is dark. The silence tells the team the shock is not heating the gas to millions of degrees. Or if heating occurs, the gas is so thin, so diffuse, that the instruments cannot detect the signal. The team looked at the infrared. Maybe the ring is made of dust. Warm dust glows in the infrared. We see nothing. The silence is profound. The void tells the researchers exactly what the ORC is not. The object is not a ring of stars. The structure is not a ring of hot, dense gas. The shape is not a ring of warm dust. So, what remains? The entire inventory consists of electrons and magnetic fields. That is the entire sum of the evidence. We are looking at a structure that is almost entirely non-thermal. The ring has no heat in the traditional sense. The shell is a magnetic construct, a skeleton of force lines illuminated by a sparse population of relativistic electrons. The ring is a ghost in the machine of the universe. The purity is unsettling. The data means that a mechanism can move 10 to the power of 53 joules of energy. The energy equals that of 1 billion suns burning for 1 billion years, and put the entire budget into magnetic fields and electrons without heating up the furniture. The fact implies an efficiency of particle acceleration that humanity does not fully understand. In most explosions, a lot of energy is wasted as heat. Here, the energy seems to be channeled directly into the magnetic structure. The conclusion brings us back to the environment, the intergalactic medium, the space between galaxies. Researchers used to think of the region as empty, a vacuum, but the existence of ORCs proves that the void is not empty. The medium is threaded with magnetic fields, the space is filled with a tenuous plasma, and the vacuum can hold a structure for 1 billion years. The structure is part of what cosmologists call the cosmic web. The universe is not a scattering of random islands. The cosmos is a network. Massive filaments of dark matter and gas stretch between the galaxy clusters, forming a skeleton that holds the universe together. Most of the web is invisible. The gas is too diffuse to glow, and the dark matter is invisible by definition. But the odd radio circle acts like a flashlight in a dark room. For a brief moment, on cosmic timescales, the shockwave illuminates a patch of the invisible scaffolding. We are seeing the threads that bind the galaxy to the neighboring systems. We are seeing the architecture of the void. The ORC resembles a footprint in the sand, but no foot exists, and the sand is invisible. We only see the pressure ridges where the grains have been disturbed. The absence of optical and X-ray counterparts creates a paradox. We have a violent event that leaves no thermal trace. The event is like a bomb going off that knocks down the building, but does not scorch the walls. The evidence suggests a mechanism that is fundamentally different from the thermal explosions we are used to. The puzzle leads to the idea of the relic lobe. We know that radio galaxies shoot out jets. These jets inflate big bubbles of plasma called radio lobes. When the jets turn off, the lobes fade. The bubbles become relics. Could an orc be a relic lobe viewed from a special angle? Imagine a person looking at a tube. If the person looks at the tube from the side, the shape looks like a line. If the observer looks at the object down the barrel, the shape looks like a circle. The perspective is the end-on theory. Maybe orcs are just old radio lobes pointing right at the Earth. The relic lobe model is a neat explanation. The theory solves the spectral index problem because relic lobes are old, so the slope should be steep. The model solves the silence problem because relic lobes are non-thermal. But the idea fails the geometry test. If orcs are tubes viewed end-on, why are the edges so bright? A tube viewed end-on should look like a filled disk, maybe brighter in the center. To get a ring, a researcher needs a hollow shell. The observer needs a bubble, not a tube. And why are so many rings present? To see a tube end-on, the alignment has to be perfect. The researcher has to be looking right down the barrel. The probability of the alignment is low. If orcs are end-on lobes, we should see thousands of side-on lobes for every one end-on lobe detected. We do see radio lobes, but the numbers do not quite match up, and the morphology is too perfect. Radio lobes are messy. The clouds get pushed around by the intergalactic wind. The structures look like clouds. Orcs look like geometry. The end-on theory is the safe bet. The end-on theory is the explanation that lets astronomers sleep at night, because the model does not require new physics, but the pieces do not fit. The ring is too clean, the center is too empty, and the edge is too bright. So researchers are forced to look at the alternative, the blast wave, a spherical shell of destruction expanding outward from the center. But if the object is a blast wave, what pulled the trigger? The energy required to excavate a cavity 1,000,000 light-years across is staggering. A supernova cannot do the job. A hypernova cannot do the job. Even a standard black hole jet might struggle to create a shape, the symmetry of the ring. A researcher needs a release of energy that is sudden, isotropic, meaning the blast goes out in all directions equally and massive. The requirement brings us to the binary supermassive black hole merger. We know that galaxies collide. We know that the black holes eventually find each other. When two black holes with the mass of 1 billion suns spiral together and merge, the monsters release gravitational waves. But maybe the union releases something else too. Maybe just before the merger, or at the moment of contact, a massive release of electromagnetic energy occurs, a burp of cosmic proportions. If the hypothesis holds, orcs are the smoke rings from the biggest guns in the universe. The rings are the aftermath of the union of monsters. But if the conclusion is true, why has humanity not seen the rings before? We have been looking at the sky for decades. The answer lies in the sensitivity. The surface brightness of these rings is incredibly low. The signals are whispers. Previous telescopes were deaf to the frequencies. The instruments could only hear the shouts of quasars and nearby pulsars. The discovery required the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, a telescope with unprecedented sensitivity to diffuse, faint structure, to finally catch the whisper. The possibility brings us to the conclusion that the sky is full of the rings. We are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. As humanity builds better telescopes, like the full Square Kilometre Array, we might find that the universe is covered in these rings, that the empty space between galaxies is actually a graveyard of overlapping fossils. The possibility brings us to the strangest thought of all. If orcs are common, if the rings are the standard gravestone of a galactic merger, then what does the fact say about our own galaxy? The Milky Way is on a collision course with Andromeda. In 4 billion years, the systems will merge. The black holes will find each other. Will the collision create an odd radio circle? Will an astronomer on a distant planet 5 billion years from now look at the wreckage of the Milky Way and see a perfect, glowing ring? Will the observer wonder what died here? The investigation into the multi-wavelength void leaves humanity with a stark realization. We are blind. We have built eyes that see light, heat, and dust. But the universe is built of other things. The cosmos is built of magnetic fields and old electrons and shock waves that ripple through the dark for eternity. The odd radio circles are a warning. The rings tell humanity that our map of the universe is drawn in crayon, and the reality is written in invisible ink. We have the radio data, we have the optical silence, we have the steep spectral index. The evidence is building a picture of a phenomenon that is old, non-thermal, and massive. But the mechanism remains elusive. The blast wave fits the shape but struggles with the energy. The relic lobe fits the energy but struggles with the shape. The investigation now examines the environment. What is the shock wave moving through? The diameter of the ring gives humanity a cross-section of the intergalactic medium. The scan acts like a core sample. By studying how the ring brightens and fades, we can map the density of the vacuum. We can see the invisible filaments of the cosmic web. The ORC is not just an object. The ring is a backlight. The structure illuminates the fabric of space. In ORC 1, humanity sees internal structures, spokes, knots. The shapes are not random. The forms are the turbulence of the medium. These are the storms in the vacuum. We are watching weather on a scale of 1,000,000 light years. The lack of optical emission tells humanity that the weather is cold. The phenomenon is magnetic weather. The pressure that holds the ring up is not thermal pressure. The force is magnetic pressure. The ring is a magnetic balloon inflating in the dark. The conclusion changes our understanding of galaxy evolution. Researchers used to think that when a galaxy died, the host went quiet, the engine turned off. But ORC 1 tells humanity that the death throes of a galaxy can last for 1 billion years. The galaxy might be dead in the center, but the ghost is still expanding, still claiming territory, still interacting with the universe. The influence of a galaxy extends far beyond the visible stars. The mystery of the odd radio circles is not just about what the rings are. The mystery concerns what the anomalies represent. The rings represent the unseen history of the cosmos. Every ring is a chapter in a book humanity has barely begun to decipher. And the fact the team found the objects by accident in a survey designed to look for something else suggests the universe has plenty more surprises waiting in the noise. Every piece lies on the table. We see the steep spectrum. We note the central galaxy. The incredible size looms large. Optical silence persists. The pairing remains unexplained. Each piece contradicts the others in subtle ways. The investigator looks at the board and realizes that the standard suspects, supernovae, starbursts, standard jets, have to be released. These candidates do not fit the profile. We are looking for a new perpetrator. The evidence points to a culprit that operates on a timescale humanity can barely comprehend, using physics that is familiar but applied at a scale that breaks our intuition. We are looking at the heavy machinery of the universe, and the machine is bigger than humanity thought. The next step is to look closer, to zoom in on the edges, to see if the ring is truly a ring, or a shell, or a tube, to hunt for the faint X-ray signature that might be hiding in the noise, to find more of the objects. The hunt is not over. The search has just begun. But one thing is certain, the radio sky will never look the same again. Humanity can no longer assume that the dark patches are empty. We know now that giants roam the dark, and the giants have been watching us for a very long time. The realization leads us to the final escalation. We have looked at the evidence. We have looked at the anomalies. Now we have to look at the implications, because if the objects are real, and if the rings are what the team thinks, then the structures are not just interesting, the objects are fundamental. The circles change the rules of the game, and the shift brings us to the edge of the known physics. The tale of ghosts and phantoms began in the quiet, dusty expanse of the Australian outback. In 2019, the silent sentinels of the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder first captured the phantom signals of a hidden universe. A team of researchers led by Norris was conducting the evolutionary map of the Universe Pilot Survey. The survey was a massive undertaking designed to catalogue millions of radio sources across the southern sky. The mission was supposed to be a routine exercise in cosmic bookkeeping, a systematic mapping of the energetic signatures of known galactic structures. However, the data stream from the 36 parabolic dishes of the telescope array changed everything. A structure emerged that defied every entry in the established catalogue of the heavens. A ghostly, perfectly circular ring of radio light, later dubbed ORC-1, stood out against the dark background of the high galactic latitudes. The circle was not a subtle smudge or a messy cluster of signals. The ring was a geometric masterpiece, an edge-brightened disk of radio emission that seemed to exist in total isolation from the stars around the structure. At first, the scientific community reacted with the appropriate level of skepticism that defines the investigative process. The immediate assumption was that the team had encountered an imaging artifact, a digital ghost born from a glitch in the complex software used to process the radio data. Radio astronomy is a field of immense technical difficulty. Interference from human technology or the subtle misalignment of a telescope dish can create circular patterns that look like real objects. But the team was rigorous. The researchers verified the detection across multiple independent observations. The researchers used different telescope arrays, including the Meerkat array in South Africa and the giant meter-wave radio telescope in India. When the same perfect rings appeared in the independent datasets, the possibility of an artifact vanished. The case was no longer about a technical error. The mystery centered on the existence of a new class of cosmic giants. To understand the confusion the discovery caused, consider the challenge of finding a structure that should not exist in the location. The odd radio circles appeared at high galactic latitudes, far from the stellar nursery of the galactic disk, making supernova remnants or planetary nebulae statistically improbable. The researchers were looking at a phenomenon that possessed the distance and the scale of a galactic cataclysm. The realization changed the timeline of the understanding of the team. The circles had been in those coordinates all along, drifting through the dark, waiting for the radio sensitivity of humanity to reach the level where the signatures could finally be decoded. Massive structures, 5 times larger than the Milky Way, were invisible to the most powerful optical instruments until now. The skepticism of the early days was replaced by a drive to measure the true physical dimensions of the objects. By identifying the faint elliptical galaxies at the geometrical centers of the circles, the team calculated the redshift of the sources. The results were staggering. The circles were not local. The rings were extragalactic. The shells were not mere puffs of gas from a dying star in our neighborhood. The structures were massive spheres of energy, hundreds of kiloparsecs in diameter, centered on galaxies millions of light years away. The shift in scale transformed the odd radio circles from a local oddity into a civilizational challenge for the field of astrophysics. So where does the investigation stand? We have moved from a collection of weird shapes to a set of hard, inescapable facts. The findings of the investigation have established several high-confidence facts that now form the bedrock of the understanding of humanity. We know with a high degree of certainty that the odd radio circles are extragalactic synchrotron sources. The synchrotron emission, generated by the ancient electrons humanity has been tracking, confirms the prehistoric nature of the fire. Now, some theories suggested the anomalies were just reflections from a nearby satellite. The idea of a satellite having a diameter of 500,000 light-years is fascinating, but the parking permits for such a craft would be an absolute nightmare. The remarkably steep spectral index confirms the electrons are ancient, whispers of a prehistoric fire that has been cooling for millions of years. The results tell humanity that the event that accelerated the electrons happened a long time ago. The battery that powered the initial explosion has been disconnected for eons. The association with central host galaxies is a piece of evidence that has held up under intense scrutiny. A massive elliptical galaxy sits at the exact center of almost every circle, acting as the heart and engine of the structure. While the galaxies often appear red and dead because the systems have stopped forming stars, the presence of the radio circles proves that the centers remain sites of extreme, hidden violence. We are looking at a shell of influence, a region of space that has been forever altered by a pulse of energy from a central black hole. The circle is the boundary of the influence, the edge of a bubble that has expanded for millions of years. The silent galaxy in the center is the suspect, the quiet giant having once birthed a cataclysm. Beyond the host, the mystery of the optical silence remains the most significant finding of the investigation. When humanity looks at the regions with the Hubble Space Telescope or advanced infrared instruments, researchers see only the empty void. The silence tells humanity the shock wave is no longer hot, with thermal energy having dissipated into entropy. Only the magnetic fields and the most resilient relativistic electrons remain. The fossilized radio rings are the magnetic skeletons of dead cataclysms. The rings provide the only way to detect events that happened 10 to 50 million years ago in peaceful galaxies. We have opened a new door into the study of galactic evolution. We are no longer limited to studying what a galaxy is doing right now. We can now look at the fossilized record of the past. The discovery has proved that the vacuum is not a blank slate, but a parchment that preserves the scars of every great energetic release. But here is the paradox that keeps the mystery alive. Even with the findings, the pieces do not quite fit into a single, perfect model. The paradox of the odd radio circles lies in the contradiction between the perfect circular symmetry of the rings and the chaotic environment of the intergalactic medium. Space is not a perfect vacuum. The void is filled with filaments of gas, magnetic fields from neighboring galaxies, and the turbulent wake of galactic motions. The physics of the intergalactic medium should distort the rings, yet humanity sees the geometric masterpieces standing firm against the chaos. Two competing models attempt to resolve the paradox. The blast wave model, the idea that a black hole merger launched a spherical shock across the void, fits the circular symmetry, but struggles with the energy budget. While the model explains the circularity, the energy required pushes the limits of the understanding of humanity. The second suspect, the relic lobe model, suggests we are looking at giant radio galaxies viewed end-on. To resolve the paradox, a new synthesis has emerged, suggesting that the odd radio circles are the result of a secondary shock event. The model proposes that the blast wave from a recent black hole merger is currently expanding into the prehistoric ruins of a former radio galaxy. The mechanics of the relighting process involve the compression of magnetic field lines. As the blast wave from the black hole merger travels through the relic plasma, the wave sweeps up the diffuse magnetic fields and squeezes the lines together. The compression reaccelerates the old, tired electrons through a process known as diffusive shock acceleration. The electrons bounce back and forth across the shock front, gaining energy with every crossing until the particles reach relativistic speeds. The energy injection allows the electrons to emit high-frequency radio waves again, making the ancient fossil visible to the telescopes of humanity. The model explains why the rings are edge-brightened. The glow is concentrated at the point of contact where the new energy meets the old matter. The center remains dark because the shock has already passed through the region, and the re-energized electrons have already begun to cool again. The odd radio circles are the ghosts of the past brought back to life by the violence of the present. The investigation has shown that the truth likely lies in the interaction between new energy and the ancient record. Each ring is a fossil, a memory of a cataclysm having happened tens of millions of years ago. We are witnessing the aftermath of events that reshaped entire galaxies, leaving behind invisible scars that only radio telescopes can detect. The combination of X-ray silence and optical darkness tells humanity that the researchers are witnessing a phenomenon that is fundamentally magnetic. The odd radio circles represent far more than the physical form of the structures. The true mystery lies in what the anomalies reveal about the history of the cosmos. The rings are probes into the nature of space. The circles show humanity that the intergalactic medium is not a passive background, but an active participant in the life of the cosmos. To truly solve the mystery, humanity must look toward the next generation of radio eyes, like the Square Kilometer Array, or EESSK. The massive international collaboration will combine signals from thousands of antennas to create a virtual dish with unprecedented sensitivity. The EESSK represents far more than a larger telescope. The array is a technological monster. Every day, the antennas will generate a volume of data that exceeds the entire current traffic of the internet. We are talking about exabytes of information streaming into supercomputers every single year. Processing the fire hose of data requires a computational capacity equivalent to hundreds of millions of modern personal computers working in perfect harmony. One might worry that the supercomputers would develop a personality and start asking for more vacation time. But hopefully, the machines will stay focused on the radio sky. The physical footprint of the EESSKI is just as staggering as the digital capacity of the system. The antennas stretch across thousands of kilometers of desert, from the Karoo region in South Africa to the Murchison Shire in Western Australia. These two remote sites provide the radio quiet required to detect the whispers of the early universe. The array uses two different types of antennas. The low-frequency array in Australia consists of over 130,000 small dipoles that resemble metallic Christmas trees. The mid-frequency array in South Africa uses hundreds of traditional parabolic dishes. By combining the signals from the two continents, the array functions as a single, planet-sized eye with a sensitivity 100 times greater than any existing telescope. The sensitivity will allow astronomers to map the magnetic field of the universe in 3 dimensions. We will finally see the fine structure of the intergalactic medium and understand how magnetic pressure shapes the growth of galaxies. The EESSK-A will turn the vacuum into a laboratory, providing the evidence needed to solve the mystery once and for all. We expect to find thousands of these circular phantoms, allowing for statistical analysis on a massive scale. The census will resolve the greatest contradiction of the case, the mismatch between the radio screams and the X-ray silence. Humanity will see how the rings evolve over billions of years, how the structures interact with the cosmic web, and how the anomalies relate to the growth of supermassive black holes. The transition from the specific discovery to the broader cosmic census marks the beginning of a new phase in the understanding of humanity regarding the heavens. We are no longer merely mapping the sky. Researchers are beginning to excavate the magnetic archives of the universe. The EESSK-A will turn the vacuum into a giant laboratory. Ripples from ancient mergers and the cooling whispers of extinct quasars can be studied with unprecedented precision. The current era represents the birth of radiopaleontology. The biography of a system now extends across the eons, preserved in the circular signatures of the magnetic giants. By listening to the radio whispers of the past, humanity has found a way to decipher the fossil record of the cosmos. The odd radio circles are the first entries in the new catalogue of the invisible. The rings prove that the vacuum is not empty, but filled with the wreckage of previous galactic cycles, waiting for a new shock to bring the wreckage back to life. Every ring we find is a piece of evidence, a clue that helps researchers reconstruct the violent transitions that define the life of an elliptical galaxy. The silence of the void was never a sign of absence. The silence was a challenge to the perception of humanity, a reminder that the most significant structures in the universe might be those that remain hidden from our eyes. The investigation has led us from a few weird pixels in a radio survey to a profound realization about the nature of galactic death and rebirth. We have learned that the intergalactic medium has a memory and that the magnetic fields can preserve the energy of ancient explosions for millions of years. The pieces of the puzzle have come together to reveal a universe that is far more interconnected and far more vibrant than humanity once dared to imagine. The odd radio circles were the start of the journey, the first indication that the darkness is full of secrets. Now that researchers know how to look, humanity realizes that the cosmos is a story written in rings of light, and we are finally learning how to interpret the record. The truth likely lies between known physics and a new class of cosmic history, and the search for more circles continues. The fascinating part is not that we have answered every question about the anomalies. Rather, the evidence keeps pointing humanity toward a truth bigger and stranger than researchers expected. Science is not about having all the answers. Science involves asking better questions every time humanity thinks we have decoded the data.